The bone-chilling crack of plastic exploding into 1,000 pieces pierces the morning silence, followed by the metallic symphony of chrome scraping concrete as a gleaming silver Suburban roars away, leaving my belongings scattered like urban tumbleweeds across the driveway. Again. But here's what Victoria Ashworth, self-proclaimed queen of Willowbrook Estates, never anticipated. Sometimes the quiet neighbor with calloused hands and a tool shed knows exactly how to build the perfect trap. By the time my concrete masterpiece was finished, this clipboard-wielding tyrant had demolished her own luxury vehicle, exposed a jaw-dropping $52,000 embezzlement scandal, and discovered that some people don't crumble under pressure, they get creative with Portland cement. What would you do if your neighbor turned morning garbage duty into a demolition derby? Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. I'm curious if this HOA insanity is spreading to your neighborhood too. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Daniel Rodriguez, 43 years old, master electrician with 19 years of experience troubleshooting everything from faulty circuits to faulty people. Recently divorced father of 2 incredible kids, Sophia, 15, and Jake, 13, trying to build a stable life in Willowbrook Estates, one of those picture-perfect HOA communities in suburban Georgia, where lawn height is regulated to the quarter-inch and mailbox colors require committee approval. I purchased this corner lot sanctuary 2 years ago, right after the divorce decree was finalized. The plan was simple. Give the kids their own spaces, access to excellent schools, and experience that mythical, safe neighborhood feeling. What wasn't in the real estate brochure was dealing with Victoria Ashworth, a 49-year-old former bank manager who transformed neighborhood compliance into her personal crusade. Victoria pilots a silver Suburban that's roughly the size of a small aircraft carrier. She relocated here 18 months ago following her husband's passing, bringing with her an encyclopedic knowledge of HOA regulations and an unsettling friendship with board president, Reginald Blackwood. This relationship essentially granted her diplomatic immunity for whatever chaos she wanted to unleash. Here's where property layout becomes crucial to understanding this epic battle. My corner lot positioning means Tuesday morning trash placement must occur near the street edge. City regulations demand within 3 feet of the curb, which happens to intersect perfectly with Victoria's daily power walk route at precisely 6:20 a.m. The inaugural incident occurred on a crisp Tuesday in early October, second week of the school semester. I'm orchestrating the morning chaos. Coffee percolating, kids hunting for homework, that distant rumble of the approaching garbage truck still 20 minutes out. Then crack. The unmistakable sound of plastic detonating like a small explosive device. I bolted outside to discover my trash receptacle utterly annihilated. Refuse distributed across my driveway like some twisted art installation featuring banana peels and coffee grounds. There sat Victoria, reversing her massive Suburban, passenger window gliding down to reveal her practiced expression of mock concern. "Oh dear," she announced with the sincerity of a telemarketing script. "These residential streets are simply too narrow for modern living. I do hope you weren't particularly fond of that particular container." That particular container had cost me $28 at Lowe's just 5 days earlier, but I maintained my composure. Accidents happen, right? I invested 25 minutes collecting soggy cereal boxes and coffee filters while diesel fumes lingered in the autumn air. Sophia and Jake observed from our front window, mortified that their father was crawling around the driveway in flannel pajamas and house slippers. Week 1 delivered 4 separate demolition events. Same timing, same engine rumble, same sickening crunch of polymer meeting steel, followed by tactical silence as she vanished around the corner. By Friday, suspicion was hardening into certainty. By the following Tuesday, I knew this was deliberate warfare. Mrs. Chun, my observant neighbor across the street, confirmed my growing paranoia during a chance encounter at her mailbox. "She takes the longer route intentionally," Mrs. Chun revealed in her precise English. "Abundant space exists on the opposite side, yet she consistently targets your container's position." I attempted diplomatic resolution first, intercepting Victoria during one of her afternoon neighborhood patrols. But before I could complete my opening sentence about the trash situation, she deployed that saccharine smile like a defensive weapon. "Daniel, I recognize you're adjusting to community living standards. These streets were engineered for reasonably sized vehicles, not oversized containers obstructing traffic flow. Perhaps you should consider temporal placement optimization. Temporal placement optimization. As if some magical hour existed when garbage trucks collected refuse without requiring curbside positioning. That evening launched my deep dive into property law, HOA governance, and municipal regulations. Turns out, trash containers positioned on public right-of-way still constitute personal property under state law. More significantly, our HOA bylaws contain zero specific requirements about placement timing or construction materials. Only that containers remain invisible from street view except during collection days. Month's end tally. 5 replacement trash cans totaling $127. Meanwhile, my kids were developing anxiety about daily neighborhood drama, and my custody evaluation team was documenting residential stability concerns. Something fundamental had to change. That's when Victoria's behavior evolved from property destruction to pure psychological torture. She began maintaining deliberate eye contact during her morning ramming sessions, wearing this satisfied little smirk that broadcast her intentions. The message was crystal clear. I know exactly what I'm doing, and there's nothing you can do about it. Game on. Early November brought escalation from physical destruction to bureaucratic warfare. I returned from a commercial wiring job to discover a certified letter waiting, the kind that triggers instant stomach acid production before you even break the seal. The language read like something drafted by corporate lawyers. Section 4.7.3 prohibits obstruction of vehicular traffic patterns. Compliance deadline: 72 hours. Failure to remedy violation results in $75 daily penalties. She'd obviously fast-tracked this through board approval while I was focused on earning a living instead of playing neighborhood politics. Here's where 2 decades of electrical code expertise became my secret weapon. When circuits don't behave logically, you dig deeper into the specifications. I spent Wednesday evening cross-referencing municipal ordinances with county regulations like I was troubleshooting a complex industrial panel. 3 hours later, jackpot. City Ordinance 247.3b explicitly mandates trash placement within 3 feet of curb on collection day. Furthermore, HOA jurisdiction terminates at property lines. They literally cannot regulate public right-of-way activities. I'd encountered similar precedents online, including a landmark California case where homeowners defeated HOA overreach using this exact legal argument. Weekend preparation resembled studying for the master electrician exam all over again. Ring doorbell camera strategically positioned for optimal morning documentation, $52 investment in evidence. Professional property survey confirming perfect municipal compliance. Even convinced Mrs. Chun to provide written testimony, though her hands trembled slightly during the signing process. I prefer avoiding confrontation, she whispered. But this situation has become completely unreasonable. Meanwhile, Victoria was conducting her own propaganda campaign across neighborhood social platforms. She flooded Nextdoor with hysterical posts about reckless homeowners endangering children and dangerous corner obstacles forcing responsible drivers into oncoming traffic lanes. The comment section became a virtual battlefield between her 3 devoted followers and everyone else who recognized her complete disconnection from reality. Tuesday morning brought unexpected intelligence from the inside. My friend Marcus Thompson works in the city permit office. We'd collaborated on several commercial electrical projects. His phone call contained fascinating information. The city received 6 separate complaints about your dangerous corner hazard, Marcus chuckled, each claiming different witness perspectives, but obviously authored by identical individuals. Timestamps show all submissions within 12 minutes at 3:17 a.m. Professional detective work. Either your neighborhood suffers from an epidemic of insomniac citizens with matching writing styles, or somebody's working overtime building a case against you. Thursday's community board meeting transformed into the neighborhood equivalent of a courtroom drama. The community center reeked of industrial carpet cleaner and decades of municipal bureaucracy. 14 homeowners attended. A record crowd that had President Blackwood nervously fidgeting with his Windsor not every 30 seconds. Victoria occupied her position at the board table, sporting a charcoal blazer that screamed, "Serious business." but I detected the subtle hand tremor when she reached for her water bottle. She sensed what was approaching. When they announced old business, I rose with my documentation folder. I'd like to address the violation notice concerning refused container placement. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead as absolute silence engulfed the room. I recited City Ordinance 247.3b verbatim, displayed survey results proving perfect compliance, and casually mentioned my consultation with Patricia Moore, a property rights attorney specializing in HOA disputes. She found the selective enforcement patterns particularly compelling. I added, watching Victoria's complexion transition to an unhealthy pale shade. President Blackwood cleared his throat repeatedly before responding. This matter requires additional review. We'll postpone pending further consideration. Translation. They possessed zero legal ground and everyone recognized it. But Victoria wasn't finished. As we dispersed, she cornered me under the buzzing security lights, revealing her true character for everyone to witness. "You think you're incredibly clever?" she hissed, loud enough for the dozen lingering homeowners to hear every syllable. "People like you infiltrate decent neighborhoods thinking rules don't apply. Well, I have news for you. This is merely the beginning." Mrs. Rodriguez from Oak Street audibly gasped. Jim Martinez, our maintenance supervisor, suddenly found his car keys absolutely fascinating. The racial undertones hung in the humid November air like smoke from a structure fire, obvious to everyone present. My phone, casually positioned in my shirt pocket, captured every venomous word. That night, Sophia asked why the angry lady despised our family. Jake wondered if we'd need to relocate again. I tucked them into bed, promising resolution was coming. Privately, I was calculating this war's mounting costs. For replacement containers, 16 hours of documentation, attorney consultation fees accumulating. But something had shifted in community dynamics. Other homeowners were questioning board overreach and asking uncomfortable questions about enforcement disparities. Victoria's parking lot meltdown had exposed what many suspected. This wasn't about traffic safety or community standards. This was about power, control, and intimidating people she considered undesirable. November hit Willowbrook Estates like Arctic wind, and Victoria retaliated with increased ferocity. While I was celebrating round one victory, she was weaponizing every obscure bylaw she could excavate. The assault arrived in coordinated waves. First, grass height violation. Apparently 2.8 inches exceeded the 2.5-inch maximum by a criminally excessive 3/10. Then mailbox color deviation. Mine had weathered from heritage blue to what she classified as unauthorized storm gray. Finally, microscopic window screen tears that required magnifying equipment to locate. Each violation carried $75 penalties with 10-day payment deadlines. The beautiful irony? I invested an entire Saturday documenting identical violations on 16 other properties. President Blackwood's grass measured 3.1 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox displayed roughly identical weathering. Half of Maple Street showed screen damage from the August hailstorm. Somehow, only my violations merited official documentation. During my regular contractor coffee session with Dale Kowalski at Lowe's, I mentioned my ongoing trash container troubles. Dale's weathered face cracked into a knowing grin that suggested he'd encountered similar situations. "You realize," he said, stirring sugar with a paint stirrer, "municipal code contains zero specifications about container construction materials. Plastic, metal, concrete. As long as it holds refuse and meets size requirements, you're completely compliant." That conversation planted the seed that would bloom into Victoria's automotive nightmare. 65 pounds of concrete mix, steel rebar reinforcement, and ingenious modification of a standard plastic shell. Total investment: $53 versus the $400 I was facing in mounting fines and replacement costs. Friday afternoon initiated my weekend concrete project. Sophia and Jake found it hilarious, helping mix cement in the garage while classic rock provided our soundtrack. The distinctive alkaline scent of setting concrete triggered memories of assisting my father with our basement floor 28 years earlier, that unmistakable smell of something permanent taking shape. The engineering was elegantly simple. Hollow bottom section for weight distribution, functional drainage holes maintained, exterior appearance identical to every other container on the block. From outside observation, completely normal. Inside, 65 pounds of steel-reinforced concrete waited to deliver a physics lesson about immovable objects meeting unstoppable egos. Over the following week, Victoria made increasingly desperate attempts to damage my concrete creation. Each collision added fresh scratches and dents to her silver Suburban, while my container remained smugly intact. The irony was absolutely delicious. Her own aggressive behavior was systematically destroying the very weapon she'd been using against me. By Friday, her SUV displayed nearly $900 in accumulated damage. My container showed a few character-building scuff marks that made it look authentically used. The neighborhood was finally talking, and for the first time in months, Victoria wasn't controlling the narrative. Mid-November transformed Victoria from neighborhood busybody into full-blown private investigator. The woman became so obsessed with my trash container that she probably analyzed it in her dreams using flowcharts and mathematical equations. I'd catch glimpses of her increasingly battered Suburban cruising past my house at random hours, like some suburban detective conducting surveillance operations. Her behavior had crossed from annoying into genuinely creepy territory. Mrs. Chun provided the first concrete evidence of Victoria's investigative activities during a Tuesday morning phone call. "Daniel, that woman was in your driveway last night around midnight with a flashlight and some kind of weighing device. I observed everything from my bedroom window. She was attempting to measure your trash container's weight." The mental image was priceless. Victoria, probably wearing her signature navy blazer and sensible walking shoes, sneaking around my property after midnight with a bathroom scale, desperately trying to solve the mystery of the indestructible refuse receptacle. Her detective work intensified throughout the week. Jim Martinez, our maintenance supervisor, mentioned she'd ambushed him at the hardware store, conducting aggressive interrogations about concrete purchases and demanding information about which residents had acquired unusual construction materials recently. She'd even begun stalking my social media accounts, scrutinizing my Facebook posts for construction clues in weekend project updates. The woman needed professional help, or at least a hobby that didn't involve digital trespassing. The twist that truly demonstrated her desperation came Thursday afternoon when a building inspector appeared at my front door. A tired-looking official named Pete, who clearly had more pressing matters than investigating garbage containers. "Ma'am filed a complaint about potential building code violations," he explained, checking boxes on his clipboard with all the enthusiasm of someone completing tax paperwork. "Something about unauthorized concrete structures on residential property." I guided Pete to examine the trash container, where he spent approximately 30 seconds before shaking his head in disbelief. "It's a garbage container, not a foundation. No permits required. No violations detected. Honestly, I've investigated people building entire storage sheds with less scrutiny than this." Victoria's bureaucratic harassment campaign continued the following week with an official HOA notice demanding immediate property access for compliance verification of exterior modifications. The letter, obviously drafted by Victoria and rubber-stamped by President Blackwood, claimed they needed to inspect my unauthorized modifications for safety violations. This is where my intensive research into property rights became invaluable. I'd invested countless hours studying Fourth Amendment protections and HOA authority limitations following that initial violation notice. The landmark precedent was Martinez versus Sunset Ridge Communities, where courts ruled HOAs cannot conduct fishing expeditions on private property without specific cause or genuine emergency circumstances. My response was professionally polite but legally firm. No private property access without court order or legitimate emergency. If you wish to inspect my legally compliant refuse receptacle, you may observe it from public right-of-way during regular collection hours. By December's first week, Victoria's Suburban resembled a vehicle that had survived multiple parking lot altercations. New dents appeared daily as she continued her futile assault against my concrete creation. The running board hung at an awkward angle, chrome trim showed impact scarring, and her front bumper displayed the distinctive scrape patterns of someone who'd learned nothing from repeated painful lessons. But Victoria's real downfall wasn't her automotive destruction. It was her increasing desperation leading to careless mistakes in other areas of her self-appointed duties. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chun, emboldened by community support for my situation, had begun questioning Victoria's financial management of neighborhood improvement projects. Specifically, the community garden renovation that had supposedly cost $8,000 but resulted in $3,000 worth of visible improvements. The mathematics don't align, Mrs. Chun explained during our Saturday morning conversation. I supervised similar projects at my previous residence. These costs appear significantly inflated. That observation triggered my investigative instincts. If Victoria was sloppy enough to conduct trash can surveillance missions at midnight, maybe she was equally careless with financial documentation. I spent Sunday afternoon at the community center, exercising my homeowner's right to review HOA financial records. What I discovered was a masterclass in amateur embezzlement spanning 8 months of creative accounting. Landscape supply invoices showing $4,200 for materials that clearly cost $1,800 retail. Maintenance contracts with companies that existed only on paper. Addresses leading to vacant lots and disconnected phone numbers. Payment authorizations bearing Victoria's signature for services never rendered to properties that didn't exist. The pattern was breathtakingly obvious once you knew what to look for. Victoria had been treating community funds like her personal checking account, probably assuming no one would bother auditing her work. Total discrepancy: $52,347 over 8 months. Monday morning brought the collision that would end Victoria's reign of terror permanently. Perhaps emboldened by weekend wine consumption, or frustrated by her complete failure to damage my concrete fortress, she approached at unprecedented speed, approximately 20 miles per hour. The impact was spectacular. Her Suburban's front end crumpled against my immovable object like aluminum foil meeting a sledgehammer. Steam erupted from her radiator, airbags deployed, and the distinctive sound of expensive automotive components surrendering to basic physics echoed across Willowbrook Estates. I rushed outside, genuinely concerned despite our ongoing conflict. Victoria sat motionless behind deployed airbags, clearly stunned but apparently uninjured. The damage to her vehicle was catastrophic. Easily $8,000 in bodywork, possibly total loss given the frame damage. Emergency responders arrived within minutes. Police, paramedics, and a very confused insurance adjuster who couldn't quite grasp why someone would repeatedly ram a trash container with a luxury SUV. Detective Sarah Williams took statements from multiple witnesses who'd observed Victoria's month-long campaign against my property. Mrs. Chun provided detailed testimony about the midnight surveillance activities. Jim Martinez confirmed her increasingly erratic behavior and bizarre questioning about neighborhood construction projects. The Ring doorbell footage was devastating. 67 separate incidents of intentional property destruction, escalating from cautious bumps to aggressive ramming, culminating in that morning's spectacular finale. But the real bombshell came when Detective Williams requested HOA financial records as part of her investigation into Victoria's mental state and potential motives for her bizarre behavior. Tuesday afternoon, Detective Williams called with updates that would reshape Willowbrook Estates forever. The forensic accounting review had uncovered Victoria's elaborate embezzlement scheme. $52, $347 in community funds diverted through fake invoices, phantom contractors, and creative expense reporting. She was probably stressed about covering her tracks, Detective Williams explained. Financial pressure can make people behave irrationally. Destroying your property might have been her way of creating distraction from the real crime. Wednesday morning brought federal agents to Victoria's front door. The FBI takes HOA embezzlement seriously, especially when it crosses state lines through fraudulent interstate commerce. Several of her phantom contractors had addresses in neighboring states. The legal resolution was swift and comprehensive. Victoria faced federal embezzlement charges, multiple counts of property destruction, harassment violations, and insurance fraud for filing false claims about unavoidable traffic accidents. Her plea agreement included $52,347 restitution to the HOA, $3,200 in damages for my destroyed property, $8,000 settlement for my legal expenses and time investment, Immediate resignation from all HOA positions. 5 years probation with community service requirements. The beautiful irony? She was sentenced to 200 hours of community service maintaining public parks, including emptying trash containers. President Blackwood resigned in disgrace for enabling Victoria's behavior and failing to oversee financial management. The new board implemented transparent accounting procedures and eliminated the fictitious compliance officer position that Victoria had created for herself. My concrete trash container became neighborhood legend. Other residents began requesting Dale Kowalski's services for their own upgraded containers, though thankfully, no one else needed them for defensive purposes. 6 months later, Willowbrook Estates had transformed into an actual community instead of Victoria's personal fiefdom. New residents received welcome baskets instead of violation notices. Children played in streets without fear of clipboard-wielding enforcement officers. Board meetings focused on genuine improvements rather than petty harassment campaigns. Victoria relocated to a non-HOA property across town, presumably where she could destroy her own trash containers without federal oversight. Sophia and Jake still laugh about Dad's super trash can, and Mrs. Chun frequently mentions how much more peaceful morning walks have become without surveillance vehicles patrolling the neighborhood. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting mad. It's getting creative with concrete and letting bullies destroy themselves through their own stubborn persistence. The moral of the story? When someone tries to push you around, sometimes the smartest response is building something they can't knock down, then watching them knock themselves out trying. And if you're dealing with your own HOA tyrant, remember, documentation, patience, and occasionally 65 pounds of properly reinforced concrete can solve problems that diplomacy cannot. Asterisk, what's your craziest HOA story? Share it in the comments below. I guarantee nothing tops concrete justice. Asterisk.